Thank you for joining me again for Bible study. This week we're approaching the fourth Sunday of Advent, that 4-week period where the church prepares for Christmas. And our readings during this season of Advent have been grouped into what I call a season of hope. Our reading for this week is rather long. It's a well-known reading, though, from Luke chapter 1, verses 26 to 56. If you haven't had a chance to read the reading, I encourage you to do so. In the video details, there is a link, so you can pause this video and find that link and click it and read the passage online and then come back to this video. If you don't have time, though, to do that right now, you can come back to it later, and I'll give you a quick summary of what happens in the reading. Gabriel visits Mary and tells her that she's going to have God's son. Mary wonders how this is possible since she's a virgin. She goes to see her cousin Elizabeth, who confirms that the child who is already in Mary's womb at this point is indeed special. Mary leaves around the time that Elizabeth is about to give birth, but there's no details in the reading as to whether or not she was actually there for the birth of the child who will become John the Baptist. For a long time, the church has emphasized that Mary subjected herself to the will of God over and against her own will. In essence, it taught that Mary's personality was very submissive, and by extension, we should be willing to submit ourselves to God whenever we're asked. Unfortunately, the church, or people in the church, have particularly used this passage as a way to convince women to be subservient to men. It is not one of the greatest teachings of the church by far. This from Feasting on the Word. For years, Mary has been portrayed as submissive because of her yes to God at the Annunciation. Now, this leads to our first question for today. If you were reading this story in a novel, how would you describe the character Mary? Take a moment and pause the video if you wish. Think about what makes up Mary's character that we know, without all of the historical trappings of faith and teachings of the church. Think about the story in itself. If you can remove that God and Gabriel are God and an angel, and make it an interaction between three people only. If you were reading this story in a novel, how would you describe Mary? As I said, for a long time, the church portrayed Mary as submissive. There is another way to look at this situation, though, and it follows up directly from that last quote that I showed from Feasting on the Word. Today, it is time to recognize that this prophetic woman, Mary, also says no to all that negates God's purposes in human history. Mary chooses to say no. No to all that negates God's purpose. God's purpose is for us to live whole and happy lives. And Mary's song of praise comes with no shame or guilt of being an unwed mother. Those who feel they don't have enough become satisfied, according to Mary's song. Those who feel that they are worth less than others are lifted up, according to the song. Mary's song is one that gives hope to people who need it. And so, this leads us into our second question for today. Does focusing on Mary choosing to work with God in redeeming the world change your response to the first question? Again, take a moment and pause the video to give this some thought. The church has long taught that the redemption of the world came through Jesus. What if we saw Mary's role in redeeming the world as a more prominent one? How would that change your response to describing her character? Does Mary choosing to work with God in redeeming the world change how you describe Mary? Once you've had time to think about these two questions, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you didn't catch them when they were displayed on the screen, that's okay. They're also included in the video details that are down below this video. Please let me know what you think. And hopefully you'll join me again in a few days for some more Bible study.